In these cold morgue corridors where silence and mystery meet, terrifying morgue stories come to life in accounts no one ever forgets. That's exactly what you're about to hear in this next story, where a baby vanished from a refrigerated drawer without a trace, leaving no explanation behind. But before we dive in, make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss any of these chilling tales. And tell me in the comments, what city or country are you watching from? Some things that happen in a morgue you just learn to swallow and never speak of again. Not everything can be explained. And some things, honestly, best not to even try. That week, the flow had been smooth. No accident victims rushed in, no last-minute cremations, no grieving families demanding death certificates on the spot. I was on the night shift, like always, monitoring the refrigeration, logging the files, scheduling the cremations. Technical work, methodical, precise, but it takes a kind of calm most people don't have. A morgue isn't a place for haste. Here, everything has to be done just right. Then Thursday night, something different came in. A baby, newborn, no name, no full birth record. Straight from North General Hospital, stamped stillborn with a mother's signed release for direct cremation. No viewing, no service, just a piece of paper, a hospital seal, and a case number, 11C. I don't ask why. That's not my job. Other people's grief isn't mine to prod. I took the tiny body, wrapped in a white cotton sheet, sealed in the transport container, and placed it in the assigned drawer. Did what I always do. Checked the number, verified the chamber temp, slid the drawer shut, logged it in the system. 9:47 p.m. Protocol says the body has to stay refrigerated for at least 24 hours before cremation. So I finished the reports and went for my coffee. Next morning I came in early. The baby's cremation was scheduled for 10 a.m. At 8:15 I went to open drawer 11C. Final check, prep for transport to the furnace. I pulled the lever, slid the tray out, empty. For a second I thought I'd misread the number. Double-checked, 11C, right where it should be. Pulled up the logs. Body intake 9:47 p.m. Status in refrigeration. Location 11C. No notes on removal, no errors, no changes. I shut the drawer slowly, looked around, started opening the others one by one, figuring maybe someone had moved it without telling me. Sometimes the day crew jumps the gun, even without clearance. But no. Every other drawer was exactly as it should be. Just 11C. Empty. Though empty isn't quite the word. The stainless steel tray was still cold, but there was a mark in the center. Like the body had been there for hours, leaving a perfect outline of condensation, shaped just like a swaddled infant. And right in the middle of the tray, almost too faint to see, a fingerprint, tiny, alone, as if someone or something had pressed down right there in the center. My hand started shaking. Not fear exactly, a strange creeping dread, like my body had noticed something my brain couldn't quite grasp yet. I went back to the monitoring room, radioed the supervisor, asked for the overnight footage. No one gets into that sector without tripping 3 different cameras, 2 electronic locks, biometric scans, a security door. No way in or out unnoticed. I spent nearly an hour reviewing the footage. At 9:47 p.m., there I was, storing the container in 11C. After that, nothing. No one else entered, no movement, not even in the hallway. Just stillness. Silence. Normal. I checked the system logs, access records, automated protocols, any sign of a software glitch. Nothing. Called the funeral home, asked if someone might have come early to retrieve the body. They said no, and reminded me the cremation hadn't even been paid for yet. No one would take the body without that settled. I tried to rationalize it. Human error. Maybe I'd messed up. But there was no trace of a mix-up. Just that eerie absence. And that mark on the tray, which felt less like a void and more like a presence. I sat in the break room. Needed to think. But my mind kept flashing back to that tiny fingerprint. Like a baby's. Or like something trying to look like one. Some people believe the souls of children get stuck here. That when life ends so suddenly, so unfairly, the spirit doesn't realize it's gone. It lingers, refuses to leave, especially when there's no goodbye, no tears, no candles, no name. I've never been the mystical type. I deal in numbers, procedures, facts. But this wasn't a fact. It wasn't a procedure. It was something else, something outside our logic. By late afternoon, I filed the disappearance report. Every detail, intake, location, logs, the vanishing. I noted the condensation, the print, sent copies to auditing and management. But I also wrote a second report, by hand, just for me. No protocol, just how I felt. Because deep down, I knew this wasn't a mistake. It was a breach. One of those invisible cracks that sometimes split open between what we understand and what we only feel. The next day, management took drawer 11C out of service. Officially for maintenance. Unofficially, no one wanted to use it again. It became an unspoken memorial. No other bodies went in there, especially not children. No one ever mentioned the missing baby again. Not the staff, not the bosses, not the funeral home. But sometimes, when I walk through that section at night and see the refrigeration lights glinting off the stainless steel, I think about that outline, the fragile shape, the lone fingerprint, and I wonder if maybe some losses are too vast to fit inside a protocol. Some presences just refuse to become absences. Unbelievable, right? What did you think of that story? On a scale from 0 to 10, how would you rate it? Leave your answer in the comments. That baby's mysterious disappearance shows us that death doesn't always follow logical rules. And sometimes the supernatural reveals itself in simple but terrifying ways. Like in the next story, where 3 knocks change the daily routine of a funeral home forever. Some things you just learn to notice, even when you don't understand. I used to work at a modern funeral home, one of those places where everything was tracked, logged, and controlled. Temperature in every compartment, check-in and check-out times for the bodies, the name of the staff member on duty, the drawer number. Nothing slipped through the cracks. The refrigerated room had 12 stainless steel drawers, 3 rows of 4, all sealed tight. Temperatures were monitored in real time, and even the slightest fluctuation would trigger an alarm at the front desk. Some people thought it was overkill, but in that line of work, the dead deserved the same care they got when they were alive. Back then, I was on the night shift. I'd done security at military bases, hospitals, even docks. But funeral homes? They hit different. The silence isn't just quiet, it's heavy. Like the air itself has weight. And no matter how much you know, nothing in there is moving. Sometimes that's not what it feels like. It was a Tuesday, just shy of 3 a.m., and I was halfway through my second round of the night. The camera feeds showed nothing out of the ordinary. The control panel for the coolers was all green. No alerts, no issues. I'd already logged that drawers 1A through 12A were occupied. Only 12B, bottom right, was marked available. Empty. No recent activity. Everything was normal, till I heard the sound. 3 knocks, sharp, evenly spaced. 1, 2, 3. They came from the direction of the cooler. I froze. You know that kind of sound you can't mishear? Not pipes, not wood settling, knuckles on metal. 3 taps, like someone inside was asking to be let out. I stood there for a few seconds trying to rationalize it. Grabbed my radio, confirmed I was the only one on the floor. Disabled the door alarm, pulled on my gloves and stepped inside. The cold hit me like a slap, same as always. I checked each drawer, all seals intact. Then I saw 12B, not unlocked, open. The door was ajar by a couple inches, something that shouldn't happen. Those drawers have a pressure seal. You've got to pull hard to open them. But there it was, like someone had yanked it from the inside. My brain scrambled for explanations. Pressure shift, mechanical failure. But the logs from the night before showed nothing. I approached slowly, then pulled the drawer all the way out. Empty. No body bag, no signs it had been used recently. I swept my flashlight inside, just the dull gleam of steel reflecting my own confusion. I documented everything, took photos, secured it with a double lock and tamper tape, left a note in the system. Drawer 12B temporarily out of service, pending technical review. Next morning, I called in the refrigeration tech. He took the front panel off, checked the piston, the seals, the sensors. Everything was fine. No malfunctions, no reason for it to open on its own, no explanation for the knocks. I asked to keep it out of rotation anyway. Didn't want to sound superstitious, but in that place, any unexplained noise was worth a second look. For the next month, 12B stayed empty, sealed off, ignored in the reports with a bright red post-it slapped on the front. Do not assign. Time passed. The weirdness faded into routine. Then, 3 months later, a woman walked into the lobby. She asked if she could see her son's body, said she'd gotten an anonymous call telling her he was here. We checked the records, name, age, description. Yeah, he was there. Found without ID, unclaimed. Logged as a John Doe with burial pending. She had this eerie calm about her. No tears, no shouting. Just stood there, staring down the hallway toward the cooler. I walked her back. When we reached the door, she paused and asked, "Was he here long?" I nodded. She took a deep breath, then said it like she was reciting a memory. When he was little, if he needed me and I was in the next room, he'd knock on the wall. 3 times. Always 3. Never more, never less. That's how he'd call for me. A chill ran down my spine. I glanced at the file again. Her son had been in 12A, the drawer right next to 12B, the one I'd found open that night, the one with the 3 knocks. She stepped closer, pressed her hand against the metal and stood there in silence. The room felt colder. That same wrong energy I'd felt at 3 a.m., like something was still waiting for an answer. She asked to have him buried with a childhood necklace she'd brought, and before she left, she looked me dead in the eye and said, "Sometimes people just need to know someone's listening." That night, before I clocked out, I went back to the cooler alone. The red post-it was still on 12B. I peeled it off, put the drawer back in rotation, not because I had answers, not because it was fixed, but because some things don't need explaining. They just need respect. Now, every time I pull up the system to assign a new drawer, and 12B pops up on the list, I hesitate just for a second and I remember the heavy silence, the 3 knocks in the dead of night, the empty drawer that shouldn't have been empty, the way she knew, like she'd felt the call even if she never heard it. I don't know if it was coincidence. I don't know if our brains just fill in the gaps with stories. All I know is, that night something wanted to be heard, and I listened. Might sound strange, but in this job, we don't just deal with the end of life. We deal with what lingers, and sometimes what lingers knocks. Creepy, isn't it? Strange knocks like those can leave anyone working with death shaken, caught between respect and fear. But in some places, the presence of the departed never truly leaves. Like in the story you'll hear now about an old hospital in Chicago where an attendant still helps out, even after death. This was no ordinary hospital. You could feel it the second you walked in. The crumbling facade, the narrow halls, that sickly mix of ether and damp rot hanging in the air. The whole place felt frozen in time. I'd just landed a job as an admin assistant at St. Agatha's Hospital in Chicago, a century-old monstrosity that had outlasted renovations, management shakeups, strikes, even a fire. But some things never changed. People died here every day. The shifts were brutal, and the air, heavy like grief, had seeped into the walls. On my first day, the manager just handed me a clipboard and told me to report to Wing C, the morgue. "It's easy," he said. "Just paperwork and receiving bodies, nothing to it." I didn't argue. I needed the job. I took the ancient elevator, groaning at every floor, and descended into the basement. The morgue was cold, badly lit, too quiet. Not the usual quiet, but the kind that makes the hairs on your neck stand up like someone's listening. The second I stepped inside, a gaunt old man greeted me. Tall, wrinkled skin like crumpled parchment. He wore an outdated orderly's uniform, military cut, with a faded ID badge I couldn't quite read. A 1950s-style cap sat crooked on his head. When he looked at me, I got this weird chill. His eyes, too deep, too dark, almost hollow. His voice sounded like rusted hinges. "You must be the new guy, huh? Come on, I'll show you the ropes." Strange that no one mentioned another employee down here, but he spoke with authority, so I followed. He showed me how to log the bodies, where the files were, how to fill out the forms. He moved hunched over, dragging his feet. Every step made the floor creak, and I kept glancing down to see if his shoes even touched the ground. Sometimes it didn't look like they did. During the day, I saw 2 other staffers pass through, but neither acknowledged him. When I asked if he only worked mornings, they just shrugged. Over the next few weeks, his presence became routine. He'd appear whenever I had questions, help with the records, even dig up old files. I never saw him eat, drink, or leave through the door. He just appeared and vanished, and stupid me thought it was normal. Then one day, everything changed. I was filling out an intake form when he materialized behind me, like he'd stepped out of the wall. His voice was drier than usual. "That one's already logged." I checked the system. Sure enough, same name, same date, same everything. Signed by him. Same handwriting he'd taught me. But the date? 1974. My stomach dropped. I pulled a nurse aside upstairs and asked about the old guy in the morgue. She went pale, dragged me into a corner, voice barely a whisper like she was afraid someone might hear. "Ethan, there's no one else assigned down there. Just you. Bodies get sent in, that's it. If you saw someone, maybe it was the old attendant. His name was Harold. Died here one winter night, locked in the cold room. They didn't find him till morning. And ever since." She didn't finish. Just shook her head, turned, and walked away. I went back downstairs on jelly legs, tried to convince myself it was a coincidence, a prank, a mix-up. But the second I walked in, the lights flickered 3 times, then died. I stood in the dark, swallowed by silence. When they flickered back on, his cap was on the counter. That same old, dusty, crooked cap. I touched it, real, cold. But when I turned to call for backup just in case and looked again, it was gone. After that, things got worse. Working in the morgue stopped being just uncomfortable. It became torture. Every shift dragged. The feeling of being watched never left. Even when I was alone, I'd sense something lurking in the corners, staring. And the weirdest part? The equipment started acting up around me. The elevator would get stuck in the basement when I rode alone. The cold room lights flickered every time I walked past. And the records, they started changing on their own. One night, the intake log was signed H. Whitaker. Harold, same shaky left-slanted handwriting as the old file. I showed my supervisor. He just laughed. Probably the night nurse is messing with you. But no one copped to it, and no one wrote like that, like a hand too tired to hold the pen, like a signature from beyond. I tried avoiding the morgue alone, but sometimes I had no choice. A late form, a delayed body. Next thing I knew, it was nearly midnight, and that's when things got bad. The temperature would plummet, my breath visible, my coat useless. Then the sound started. First, a faint creak, then slow, dragging footsteps, like someone walking on broken legs. I'd force myself to look, no one there. One of those nights the hallway light burned out for good. My phone flashlight was all I had. Just had to log one body and get the hell out. But halfway through I heard a whisper. Not a normal voice, gravelly, rasping, with this wet hiss at the end of each word. I couldn't make out what he said, but I felt it crawl up my spine. I spun around. There he was, half in shadow, half inside the wall. Old uniform, crooked cap, eyes black as pitch, not blinking, just staring and smiling. A slow, lopsided grin like he knew something I didn't. I froze, couldn't scream, couldn't run, just stared back. And then, poof, gone, like he'd dissolved into the air. All that remained was the bone-deep cold and that rotten ether stench clinging to my clothes. The next day I begged for a transfer. Made up excuses. Allergies, claustrophobia, breathing problems. They said it was temporary, that I'd move up soon. Lies, I knew the truth. No one wanted this job, and if someone could hack it, even scared out of their mind, that someone was me. I started asking the old-timers, janitors, techs, even security. A night guard named Miguel was the first to level with me. "You've seen him, haven't you?" I just nodded. He sighed like he'd been expecting this. Most do eventually. Some quit, others pretend they didn't. But no one forgets Harold. I asked why, what he wanted. Miguel didn't sugarcoat it. "No one knows. They say he died on shift waiting for relief that never came. Locked in by mistake, or maybe on purpose, froze to death in there. Now he's stuck, doing the same routine. Logging bodies, helping the new guy, waiting for someone or something. After that, my head was a mess. I started having nightmares, trapped in the morgue, Harold handing me files for people still alive. In another, I was the body, and he was sliding me into the drawer with that same damn smile. I got careless. Files vanished from my desk. The cold room door swung open by itself. One shift, I went to sign the logbook, already signed. My name, my handwriting, my time. But I hadn't touched it yet. Like he knew I'd be there. Like he'd been expecting me. Then came the final straw. I went to retrieve a body that had come in early. The drawer where it should have been, already open. The intake form, filled out. Time matched the system, but no one else had been down there. I pulled back the sheet and screamed so hard I blacked out. The body was mine. Same shirt, same ID badge. Pale face, half-open eyes. I woke up minutes later, alone, shaking. The drawer was empty, but the sheet was still damp. And my real badge? Gone. Found it the next day, hanging from the drawer handle. No signs of a break-in. No footage. Security swore no one had been down there. Harold stopped appearing after that. But the signs didn't. The cold room light still flickers at midnight. The footsteps still echo. And every now and then I find a file on the counter for someone who isn't dead yet. Like a warning. Or a reminder. Now, when new hires show up in the morgue, I watch. I wait. And when I see them pale-faced rushing past the back drawer, refusing to look too long, I know. Harold's paid them a visit. And I know something else too. He's not gone. He's just waiting for the next one. Disturbing, right? It's unsettling to think someone might stay trapped in a place out of loyalty or because of an unfinished duty. But what happens when it's not even a ghost in human form, but something that moves in the shadows, right before your eyes? That's exactly what the next story reveals. But before we continue, if you've made it this far, that means you're enjoying these stories. So hit the like button to let YouTube know you want more of this content, and you'll never miss another horror story again. Something was wrong with that body. I knew it the second I unzipped the bag. Can't explain it any other way. No visible deformities, nothing that screamed wrong at first glance. Just an ordinary guy, late 50s, maybe early 60s, wearing a wrinkled dress shirt and shoes that looked expensive. But the eyes, they were half open. Not like when someone dies suddenly, all slack and empty. No, these were different. Like he was trying to focus on me. Like he was still in there. This was the prep room in the basement of St. Telmo General. Cold, damp. The fluorescent lights too bright, too sterile. I knew every sound that place made. The hum of the AC, the drip of the stainless steel sink, the click of the freezer cycling on. Part of the routine. But that day, the silence was heavy. Not the usual quiet. The kind that presses down on your shoulders like a weight. I laid out my tools like always. Scissors, suture thread, the curved needle, the small scalpel. Tested a fresh blade on the gauze. Checked the file. Male, approx 55, no ID. Probable cause, massive stroke. Cleared for cosmetic prep and identification. I flipped on the surgical lamp, angled it right at his face. His forehead was slightly creased, like he'd died mid-thought. But what got to me were the eyes. The way they seemed to track my movements. I took a slow breath. I'd seen worse. I'd stitched up skulls split open by gunshots. I'd reconstructed faces after falls from overpasses. But this one? He made my skin crawl for no good reason. I started the process, made the incision along the right side of his scalp, careful, like always, so I could access the bone, do the closure, make him presentable. Lifted the flap with the spatula, and the second I reached for the cranial support, a shadow cut across my hand. Not a flicker, not a blur. Dense, fast, dark, like something had stepped between me and the light. I whipped around. No one there. The door was shut. The electronic lock hadn't even blinked. The reflection in the tiled wall showed just the gurney, the sink, the cabinets, and me. Only me. I froze, tried to rationalize it. Faulty bulb, a bug, something outside the room. But there was no sound, no draft. And the worst part? I felt it pass through me, like a jolt of bad energy, straight through my chest. My hands were steady when I turned back. Mostly. I looked at his eyes again, still half-lidded, still fixed on me like he was waiting for an answer. Like he wasn't just there, he knew me, not the other way around. I had no idea who he was, but it hit me like he'd recognized me. I kept working, sealed the bone with wax, reshaped the structure, pulled the scalp back into place, brushed the hair, stitched him up one careful suture at a time. Every stitch felt like I was being watched, not from across the room, right beside me, a thick spiritual presence just out of sight. I finished up but lingered longer than usual over the paperwork. Not just protocol. It felt like something in that room demanded extra care, extra respect. I double-checked the intake time, pulled the security footage, wanted proof the shadow was real. There was nothing. No glitch in the light, no movement, just me. And him. I sanitized the tools by hand. Didn't trust the autoclave. Wanted to scrub each one the old-fashioned way. And the whole time I kept glancing at the body, waiting for something. And even though I knew it was impossible, I couldn't shake the feeling that he hadn't left yet. A few hours later, they called me to reception. A woman had come to ID him. His daughter, mid-30s, red-rimmed eyes. The second she saw his reconstructed face, she dropped to her knees, sobbing. I thought I'd never see him again. Thought I wouldn't get to say goodbye. She stayed like that for minutes, gripping his hand. Then she whispered something that sent ice down my spine. "You waited for me, didn't you?" I closed my eyes, didn't trust myself to speak, because deep down, I thought the same thing. She left in silence, nodding her thanks. I stayed a little longer, looked at him one last time. His eyes were fully closed now, like he'd finally let himself go. At the end of my shift, I went back down alone, rechecked the footage, frame by frame. The moment the shadow had passed, nothing. No light flicker, no interference, just me and the body. But here's what got me. In one frame, right before the shadow I swear I saw, my hand is frozen midair. And for a single second his head turns, just a few degrees. Barely noticeable, but it's there. And I know I didn't imagine it. After that day, I changed a few things. Now I talk to them, ask permission before I unzip the bag, treat every prep like a farewell, even if no one ever comes to claim them. Because sometimes death isn't the end. Sometimes the body moves on, but the soul sticks around, waiting for something or someone. Strange, isn't it? What did you think of this one? On a scale of 0 to 10, how would you rate it? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Some things just can't be explained. There are things in this world you can't rationalize, things you just learn to respect with time. And in my line of work, learning that lesson fast isn't just professional advice. It's a sanity check. I work at a mid-sized funeral home serving the outskirt towns in this region, the kind of place where protocol and superstition blur together. Everything's documented, labeled, signed in triplicate. But then there are the things that happen where people just glance sideways, clear their throats, and change the subject. Drawer 6 is one of those things. The refrigeration unit holds 12 compartments, constant temperature, monthly inspections, all up to health code. But 6? No one used it. No one ever said why out loud, but you could tell by the way staff would jump from 5 straight to 7. That drawer had a history, the kind no one wanted to talk about. It wasn't a mechanical issue. I'd checked the thermostat and the slides myself more than once. Everything worked fine. But from day one, I caught the whispers. Stories about toe tags vanishing, bodies turning up in the wrong drawer overnight, a metallic scrape coming from inside like something was pushing from within. Sometimes someone would force a laugh like it was all nonsense. But no one ever risked putting a body in there. Not even me. Until that Friday. We'd just taken in an 87-year-old woman, Mrs. Eleanor Hayes, passed from natural causes. The family wanted the viewing that weekend. Problem was, we were packed. 2 other funeral homes in the area had their coolers down, so every case got funneled to us. When I went to log her in, I realized 6 was the only drawer left. I called my boss over. He just stared at me, jaw set, and said, "No other choice." Even the nurse with us looked away. We followed procedure to the letter, checked the toe tag, filled out the forms, visual inspection sealed it shut. All standard, but the air in that room, it got heavy. Not the humidity, not the chill, something else. Like we weren't alone, like something was watching, waiting. That night I pulled the overnight shift. My office is a glorified closet next to the cooler hall, with a live feed of the cameras on my monitor. The hum of the refrigeration unit fades into white noise after a while. But around 3 a.m. something jolted me awake. A click, sharp, definitive. The sound of a drawer slide being yanked hard. I looked at the screen. The camera showed the cooler, still and silent, but something was off. Drawer 6. It was ajar. Just a sliver, maybe half a centimeter, but enough to send a cold prickle down my spine. I moved slow, grabbed the master key and stepped into the hall. The silence was thick, the kind that swallows sound. When I opened the cooler door, the cold hit me like a wall. The fluorescent lights in there never flicker. They're steady, reliable. But that night, they seemed dimmer, weak. I approached 6. It was open. A thin ribbon of fog curled out from the gap. I shined my flashlight inside and pulled the drawer open the rest of the way. Mrs. Hayes was still there, just as we'd left her. But something else was in there too. At the foot of the gurney, loose and out of place, was a toe tag. Not hers. The name printed on it read, Henry Dillard. Date 1974, St. Joseph's Hospital next town over. Only problem, that name wasn't in any of our records. Not digital, not in the old paper archives. Nowhere. Here's where it gets worse. The tag was old, yellowed paper, ink faded but bone dry. Pristine. Like it had been placed there minutes ago. The hair on my neck stood up. That feeling of being watched, it doubled, tripled. Like I'd just crossed some line I didn't know existed. I stood there staring at that tag. The name, the date, the hospital. None of it belonged. I've handled hundreds of bodies, seen thousands of these tags. You develop a sixth sense for when something's wrong. And this? This was wrong on a level I couldn't explain. My hands were shaking, but I pocketed the tag anyway. Don't ask me why. Instinct maybe. Or stupidity. I shut the drawer, locked it, and headed back to my desk, replaying what the hell had just happened. I scrubbed through the camera footage frame by frame. Nothing. No movement, no glitches, no explanations. 1 second the drawer was closed. The next, cracked open. The next morning I showed my boss the tag. He didn't bat an eye, didn't even pretend to doubt me. Just asked, "Was there a body in 6?" I said yes. He nodded, went quiet for a long beat, then muttered, "Been happening for years. You're the first to see the tag, though." And just like that, he moved on, like it was just another footnote in the business of death. I became obsessed with that name, Henry Dillard. Spent the next 2 days digging, called every hospital in the county, the courthouse in the neighboring town, even dug through the funeral home's oldest files, the ones no one touches. Zilch. No burial records, no intake logs. It was like the guy had never existed. Then, Sunday night rolled around. I was back on shift. The team had released 2 bodies and taken in 3 more. Drawer 6 was officially under maintenance, but we all knew the truth. In the back of my mind, I knew this wasn't over. Whatever was tied to that tag, it was still here. Around 2 a.m., the camera feed cut to static for a second. When it cleared, one of the drawers was open. 6. Again. I bolted to the cooler, phone recording in my pocket. Same eerie, dim light. Same Arctic blast when I opened the door. 6 was wide open this time. But what stopped me cold was the gurney. Mrs. Hayes was gone. For a second, I thought I'd lost it. But the other drawers were all locked. No signs of tampering. That's when I saw her shoved into drawer 9, lying on her side like someone had tossed her in there in a hurry. And on the metal floor, right in front of 6, another tag. Henry Dillard. Identical to the first. Same faded print, same date. Only this one was damp, like it had been pulled from somewhere humid, or somewhere time didn't work the same. Then I heard it. A low, dragging sound from inside the drawer. Muffled, like something was scraping against the bottom trying to... I slammed the cooler door shut so fast I didn't even lock it. Didn't care. I barricaded myself in my office until morning. When I finally worked up the nerve to go back, the day crew was already there. No one noticed a thing. After that, no one talked about it. Mrs. Hayes was laid to rest. No one ever knew she'd been moved. I kept both tags, tucked them in a folder in my locker with a blank intake sheet, scribbling down what I'd seen. Like putting it on paper would make it real. Like it would make it stop. We use drawer 6 now, but carefully, never for more than a night. And every time I have to open it, I think, what if he's in there again? I never got answers. Don't need them. Some things aren't here to be understood. They're here to remind you that in places like this, time isn't as straight as we pretend. Sometimes the past leaks. I work in a funeral home. I deal with endings every day. But every now and then I'm reminded that not everything stays ended. And sometimes a simple strip of paper tied to a toe carries more than a name or a date. It carries something that's still trying to be seen. And if you've stayed with me all the way until now, write drawer 6 in the comments, just so I know who made it to the very end. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next stories, because here you'll always find chilling accounts that get under your skin. And hit that like button if this video kept you hooked. That kind of support helps me keep bringing you more stories like these. There's another video right here filled with even darker morgue stories. Click it and keep watching with me, because the next one might be even more disturbing.